Hello, and welcome to the Money and Banking Law Podcast with Joe Silvia, brought to you by Duane Morris, an international law firm with roughly 30 offices and 1,000 lawyers all over the world. I'm your host, Joe Silvia. I'm a former Federal Reserve lawyer who represents banks, fintechs, and financial services clients on M&A, payments, and regulatory matters at Duane Morris. I'm also a core member of our banking, fintech, and digital assets and blockchain practices. Now, while we can't provide legal, financial, investment, or tax advice on the podcast, our goal for the Money and Banking Law podcast is to inform and educate our clients and friends on both the fundamental concepts and structure of the banking ecosystem, as well as critical developments in the law and regulation of money and banking. Thanks for joining us today. As always, if you have any questions from any of our podcast episodes, please reach out to me at jsylvia@duanemorris.com. On this episode, we're talking about cannabis banking with Terry Mendez and Michael Schwamm. Terry is the CEO of Safe Harbor Financial, and Michael Schwamm is a partner in our New York office. Welcome, Terry and Michael. Grateful for you guys being here. Really appreciate this and really looking forward to the discussion. Let's start with just a little bit of background. Terry, can you just give a quick background on you and where you've been, what you're doing, and we'll go from there.
Sure. Again, thank you for having me, Joe, CEO of Safe Harbor. But before I became CEO of Safe Harbor, I was the CEO of a multi-state operator called Nature's Medicine, and ran the Nature's Medicine brand and the Pure Life brand out in New Mexico, and was in 7 states. Dozens upon dozens of dispensaries, cultivations, extraction facilities, kitchens across the country. Before that, I was a single state CEO here in Colorado for a company called Dalwhinnie. But before cannabis, I was in the .com space, working with technology companies, Fortune 500, Global 500 type companies, up and down Silicon Alley and Silicon Valley, whether it's California or New York. So jumping into cannabis was an adventure, definitely a difference from that industry. But I've been doing this now for 7 years and loving it.
Awesome. Thanks so much. So most of our podcast will be focused on Safe Harbor and what Terry's got going on over there. But Michael, can you give a little bit of background on you and your practice out of our New York office?
Absolutely. So as Joe mentioned, I'm a corporate partner, excuse me, in our New York office. My practice is heavily corporate M&A and other private capital transactions across a wide variety of industries, and probably spend 60% of my time there, and then probably 40% acting as outside general counsel for similarly sized companies. But I got dragged kicking and screaming into the cannabis industry about 10 years ago, because who really at that point really wanted to be known as a pot lawyer. But I had a lot of family office clients that were interested in the space, and Duane Morris was the first national law firm to enter it. And they when they heard that, they were more kind of curious than anything else, and so they started asking, and I figured after 3 or 4 questions I could no longer hand it off to my partners and had to learn the industry. And it's been a ton of fun since. I met Terry 5 years ago at a cannabis executive forum we host every year in Vail, Colorado, and when he was at Dalwhinnie, and it led to us being brought on as their outside general counsel-ish back in April of last year.
Awesome. Yeah, and I appreciate that, Michael. As you mentioned, Terry is a client. He's a great client. We do a lot of really good work together. So Terry, tell us a little bit about Safe Harbor and what you guys got going on over there.
Sure. So Safe Harbor started out as a division, or what's called a CUSO, within a financial institution, Partners Colorado Credit Union. We went public on the NASDAQ in 2022, and at that point, we were a non-depository financial technology company, fintech, working with financial institutions who wanted to successfully bank cannabis compliantly. And that's a big ask, because you're asking banks to do something in their world that is outside of their normal scope. Things like making sure cannabis isn't sold next to children's toys, for example. And so we have Anti-Money Laundering, Bank Secrecy Act, Know Your Customer, Enhanced Due Diligence, just a number of regulatory things that we handle on behalf of the financial institutions, as well as technology. Now, I joined last year, and in the last year, we've done a couple of newer things where we've acquired 420 IT and now have a managed services business where we're helping people with treasury issues, accounting, finance, HR, dispensary management, 401k, a multiple employer 401k. And we also have an expanded lending portfolio. So I tell people, hey, Safe Harbor today is in the business of helping people bank, operate, borrow, and grow.
Awesome. So, with respect to cannabis banking, in your time as CEO at Safe Harbor and then also running a cannabis multi-state operator, what are some of the most important considerations that banks, credit unions, and other financial services organizations should be thinking about when they're providing services to cannabis or cannabis-related businesses?
Sure. So I found it quite interesting now being on this side of the aisle versus being a user of bank services before. Um, the cannabis industry is no longer something to be hidden. You want to work with partners that know your industry and are out there attracting deposits and being in the ebb and flow of the industry. Safe Harbor has an incredible amount of domain expertise. Most of our employees were formerly employees of operators, including myself and most of my executive management team. It makes a very big difference when you get on the phone call with someone who's actually been in your shoes trying to solve your problems before. And so we like to call it Safe Harbor Inside. I don't know if you remember the Intel Inside when you used to buy a Pentium computer and 486 with Intel Inside. Well, Intel Inside gave you the confidence that whatever the box brand was, the computer was going to work. Safe Harbor Inside, when we partner with our financial institutions, gives them the ability to have someone that not only understands the banking world, but really understands the world of operating inside of the cannabis industry, which is very unique. It's a very different CPG kind of model. The other thing you're looking for is a partner, even if we cannot do lending. Everybody says, can you lend me money? And sometimes I can say yes, and sometimes no. And today I can say yes a lot more often than just a year ago because we've expanded into family offices and private equity and other avenues of capital. But that being said, even if I can't help you directly, I want to hear your pitch, right? If you hear the pitch, you want somebody that can help you refine the pitch to something that could win uh, whoever's providing that capital resource. And so part of what I really wanted to do in joining Safe Harbor was bring that cannabis industry experience to bear for the success of our clients, right? To be able to sit there and listen to someone's story and say, yes, I can help you, or no, I can't, but I can give you someone who can, and connect those dots so that you're accelerating that success matrix for them.
That's great. So I'm curious, Terry, when you meet with um, potential new clients, potential new financial institutions that are looking
Mhm.
at hiring you, what have you found in terms of their familiarity, sophistication level with respect to the cannabis industry? Is it really kind of green? Is it that they, no pun intended, is it really green that they just don't understand the industry? And that's one of the most important things that they're looking for from you? Or is
Mhm.
it that they're looking more for um, pieces of, be it compliance or something else that they want to utilize to just be more efficient in whatever they're already doing?
I wouldn't say that our financial institution partners are green per se, but they know what they know. They know how to move money. They know merchant services. They know ACH processes, wire transfers. They know compliance, and they do that well. And they know how to attract depositors. But we hear
Mhm.
every day that, everyone's weeds the best. And so you kind of like left open. A financial institution says, my customer service is the best. That's kind of table stakes. What do you
Right.
do beyond that customer service table stake, motherhood, and apple pie to make sure that your clients gain access to people that really know how to answer their questions beyond just a good ear to listen to their struggles and then process the money movement that they're trying to process through. Banks get access to a tremendous amount of data. I have the ability to understand who pays you and who you pay, right? Across the board. And so when you're seeing that information and somebody in the cannabis industry gets a validation flag, why are you spending this type of money? And we have to go validate. Wouldn't it be interesting to not only have a conversation about, yes, we're approving your wire transfer, but hey, by the way, we looked at this and have you considered A, B, and C before you spend that money? Right? That next level of consultation and going beyond banking. But when we talk to financial institutions, we talk about safe harbor inside. But we also talk about lending, loan syndications, and participations. Banks lose customers that they achieve because they can't do a loan large enough to meet the customer's demand. All that customer goes out of business. I wanted to solve for both of those. And so having the ability today to do loan syndications across multiple financial institutions, give a regional bank or a local community bank credit union the ability to then potentially meet the desired outcome of their client while still staying within what they believe is an acceptable risk perspective for their bank.
And Joe, one thing
Absolutely.
I'll add to
Yeah.
what Terry had said about, anybody in the industry, I agree, is not green. But one of the questions that, we often or sometimes get, where Safe Harbor can be a real resource for us, is financial institutions who are not yet in the industry, but realize they need to be prepared for when that customer shows up with a very large potential deposit, whether it's a bank, a brokerage firm, and management is getting close to being comfortable to take it if they have the right guardrails in place. And so, having, they don't want to necessarily staff up for this, but they have to understand and then hopefully have a resource who can effectively be their compliance division. And we've seen it, a couple of times recently with one case was a West Coast brokerage firm, and they're not there yet, but they know at some point one of their brokers are going to say, I have a $10 million deposit.
Right.
Can we take it?
So,
Yeah.
Mike, to your point, and Joe, 100% right. In order to buy, let's say, the software that's out there that manages compliance, that knows that, Colorado Springs rules for cannabis are different than Denver, here in Colorado, or, Long Island is different than Nassau County could be different than Suffolk County, who's different than New York City and Westchester County. They all have their own rules and they change frequently. So having the software that has the capability of ensuring that you're extending banking to folks that are remain compliant and to whatever the latest and greatest rules are. That's one piece. That's an expensive development, could be as high as $250,000. Then you have to hire people like a BSA officer and relationship bankers that will service your clients that you don't have yet. So that's a venture startup, startup cost. Then you have to program that software, train those people on that software. Hopefully they get the right outcomes. And when you get those outcomes, you need to have a compliance team ready to read the outcomes and say yes or no. On top of that, you have a customer acquisition team going out there and telling the world, hey, I would like your deposits. Sorry, I waited, 10 years to get into this game, but I'd like your deposits, right? How do you do that? And this is where I wanted to build something to solve it. I don't know if you noticed, we issued something called Fully Managed. I think it was July or August of last year. Fully Managed is just that. It's an outcome, right? So all you have to say to me is, Terry, I want to bank cannabis. We set you up on our system and we charge you only if you're successful. And this is one that's really kind of, interesting for people to understand. I've already made the investment. And so I'm adding you to my platform and you're getting instant economies of scale, as opposed to you building yourself and you take the build risk and you also take the business risk of, do I get customers? And I can't tell you how many financial institutions I meet at shows that tell me we've gotten 20 clients or we have 50 clients. Just the cost to build it requires you to have 150 plus clients before you break even, which is why something like 20% of the financial institutions that chose to bank cannabis at some point within 2 years turn it off and say, it's not working, I'm not making money. Well, I want to solve that too. There's no reason for you not to make money. Quite frankly, you shouldn't spend $1 in anything other than customer acquisition costs. Go out and get the customer, then activate the system that allows you to get that, handle that customer compliantly.
Yeah, I think one of these new terms is compliance as a service, right? It's software as a service, compliance as a service. People are talking about crypto as a service, all these
Yeah,
different things,
it's an
but
infrastructure
it's
play.
right, absolutely. And the some of the financial institutions that I've represented over the years and worked with either on cannabis related issues or just in general, um, they they are always looking for solutions that are not only cost effective but particularly efficient and and quick to support their ideas and hopes for growth. And something like this is certainly right up that alley, especially as it relates to cannabis operations. So that's great. Michael, in terms of the work that our firm does for other cannabis or cannabis related clients, anything that you're seeing out in the market in terms of unique positioning, whether it relates specifically to financial institutions or if it's just more broadly in the cannabis market, anything that you're seeing that's unique to you or new or novel that you're seeing out in the industry?
As Terry had alluded to earlier, it's a ever-changing industry. Um, Almost hour by hour, if not day by day.
Yeah.
And I think the most frequent question we get asked is, you know, I now have this problem that didn't exist a week ago. How do I solve for it? And it can
Yeah.
be any number of things. I mean, banking is always an issue. Um, you know, Banks change their positions on, on being cannabis friendly or not, or, you know, particularly for early stage companies, they use a related entity to establish the banking relationship, and then their bank signs out that they are in fact a plant touching or sometimes even an ancillary business, and they're turned off within 24 hours. And I think one of the we as lawyers, very often are brought in for a specific, you know, problem or issue, and then the client goes away. I think one of the really interesting things that's happened with our relationship with Safe Harbor is, we sit in on their weekly management meetings. We know everything that's going on, and it enables me to, often, I mean, understand what's happening, certainly on the FI side of things. So when clients have those kind of problems, like, have you thought about this as a solution? Obviously, I always, recommend a call with Safe Harbor, but even helping them identify what the problem is or the problem is likely to be, is a big win for us and frankly our clients that are having that, ability to foresee what problems that could be coming down the pike that I'm not even thinking about.
Yeah, I think, looking at the law firm client relationship as a real partnership and understanding the client and their business to that degree makes, I think from our perspective, makes our job easier and makes us better at our job because we understand more than just the simple question that's being asked and the facts that we have to kind of pull out of the client question to make sure that we understand what research needs to be done or doesn't need to be done or what exactly is going on. So that's fantastic.
And understanding, sort of the bank's perspective and sort of what happens behind the scenes, right? I mean, in a variety of things, and and therefore be able to sort of trace, what's going to happen to these clients from birth to exit, whatever that might look like, how it all evolves, and having the kind of practice we have at the firm within this industry really helps us guide clients in whatever aspect of the industry they're in.
And I think you're talking and you're hitting on a special concept, whether you're a legal service provider, a financial service provider, an accountant, or any of the plethora of people that provide services to the cannabis industry. At some point, we have to merge these together as the next generation, as we think about what's coming out into a value add proposition. And value add billing has been a concept for a decade. Won't go too much into what that means, but the reality is, when you're making decisions on, do I get expert counsel? Do I get expert accountants? Do I get an expert figure it out? There's a question of affordability, where it sits in, and the value of what I'm going to pay versus what I actually I'm going to achieve with that information, right? And so, been talking to many people about the concept of becoming, and this is a test case, my relationship with Duane Morris, becoming part of their executive team, taking an advisory role, being in the ebb and flow so that when there is something that could be added value, you can jump in and add that value and they can see it and they understand that you're there to help them be successful. Think about, the HR department for a second, and you'll take it out of legal, right? Think about the HR department. You have a benefit administrative coordinator person. You have someone that's handling payroll. You have someone that's hiring and firing and attracting talent, reviewing talent. You have a payroll processing system. You even might have a people management system like a Workday, right? All of those things come together, and none of those things help you sell cannabis. They are just things you have to have, right? And things you don't really love doing. But if I can bring you a solution that effectively is still your solution that you're doing, cost you the same, maybe even less than owning it yourself, but you're getting the outcomes that you need, I've now developed a service product that is worth something to you, right? Now, there is the control aspect. If I hire the person, I can yell at the person. If I hire the person, I can fire the person. I can tell the person what raises. But if you take away that control aspect, what you're really trying to do is compete with people that have access to capital much broader than you. And so how do you compete with a person that has access to capital broader than yours? Put yourself on a common platform where you can leverage the economies of scale that have already been built on your behalf.
Absolutely right. Absolutely. So, turning back to cannabis specific issues, Terry, I know we're starting to run short on time, and I want to be respectful of your time because you're a publicly traded company CEO, and you've got a million people asking for your time. So I appreciate the time you have spent with us. Where do you kind of see, outside of legislation or legislative activity, where do you see the cannabis industry's evolution in the near term?
You're seeing it happen as we speak. People are buying up paper at a discount to the issue price, putting together synthetic multi-state operators, trying to combine people that are healthy, that collectively can then dominate that space and become attractive from a future exit perspective. And so that is one area of you're seeing move. What's challenging there is, I was part of a company that did a number of acquisitions every single quarter, call it a leverage buyout organization type company. I won't give names, but what happens when you have that many acquisitions in a short period of time is the internal chaos of having, 17 accounting systems, 8 CFOs, and all of these kind of overlaps that you have to iron through, right? And then when you're trying to package it all together, say a year or two from now, you're going to need a baseline system so you know what you have. And you can actually report a SIM that is complete and has some confidence behind it to say, this is what you're acquiring and why. And the big exits are going to be, in my opinion, public companies that acquire cannabis companies. When you get rescheduling to Schedule 3, even Pfizer has some Schedule 3 drugs. You now become potentially acquirable if you get different NASDAQ and NICE listing rules that allow for plant touching. You become acquirable. And when you become acquirable, there are levels of additional things that you need to have. And if you have them before I acquire you, you're worth more. Like governance and controls in Sarbanes-Oxley, for example, right? And cybersecurity and all the things that a public company has to think of that a cannabis operation today doesn't have to think of. One of the reasons I jumped into cannabis when I did is I was a dot-com kid. I was 19, 20 years old programming and getting offers from companies like DoubleClick. And because I had a really cool job, I said, no, that was dumb. Jumping into cannabis now This becomes like, the second coming where, folks that have the expertise of being in large Fortune 500, Global 50 companies, as well as the cannabis expertise, hopefully help navigate people towards those exits. And so that's part of the reason I, acquired the managed services business. And I really want to help as best I can, even those companies that are on the border of receivership. We talk about there's being no federal bankruptcy law. That's still not going to be relevant for us, I don't believe. And so, knowing the state receivership rules, how to stay away from them, and even if you go into them, how to manage that correctly is a strategy that you can work with us on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll ask you in a second. I want to throw it over to Michael, but in a minute I'll ask you, Terry, about whether there's anything that I haven't asked about that you think is really important for the conversation. But Michael, anything for the evolution of the industry that you see, expect, look forward to, anything in that area outside of legislation?
100% would agree with Terry. I think this industry is at a point where consolidation is coming, and frankly, is absolutely necessary. There are way too many small cannabis companies out there, too many brands, not enough capital, and so I think we are entering a period where the only option for the weak are either go out of business or get acquired. It is a bit challenging because there's still not a ton of cash available to do those acquisitions. So you're going to have to take someone else's paper in exchange for yours. If we get rescheduling, one of the only certain things that will do is eliminate the incredibly adverse tax consequences known for those in the industry as 280E, which is the tax code reference. That goes away. It frees up, probably billions of dollars in free cash flow. And so these companies will have, the bigger companies, the ones that are currently profitable, will actually now have cash to do acquisition. So I think we certainly are going to see that. And absent that, as Terry had said, we're going to wind up with, either distressed sales or receivership situations where people can sort of cherry pick, the prime assets. And, we've seen recently a bunch of UCC sales, even sort of sidestepping pure receiverships, where you have buyers come in and actually get the cherry pick, which we'll take this brand and we'll take this location and we don't want anything else.
Gotcha. Yeah. All right. So Terry, anything that I should have asked that I didn't, anything you wanted to highlight either about Safe Harbor, about the cannabis industry, financial institutions, anything in between, anything there?
Yeah, fair. So you're seeing a number of items that are regulatorily impactful, right? Rescheduling to Schedule 3, elimination of 280E. We haven't seen bank secrecy, I'm not sorry, BSA or modified in any way. Anti-money laundering, know your customer, and without modification there, you're still going to have a complicated banking relationship. You're seeing some regulations that will impact the industry in one way or the other. The ban on intoxicating hemp, right? Whether that actually becomes a ban or not, many of the MSOs have business investments that are in the intoxicating hemp side. Many financial institutions have loaned to companies that are in the intoxicating hemp side. And so the implications there are large, and having sustainable business practices are also important. So you have a business type that is moving from federally legal to maybe a Schedule 1 or a Schedule 3 designation, and having to build things like compliant payroll, compliant merchant services, right? Compliant banking, something that they don't think about today, but from an investor perspective, if they are in that space, thinking about what you're going to do if the regulation doesn't go the way that you hope it goes is important. And we've solved for those issues. And so that's another area where I'm just focused on how to bring forward solutions that allow people to migrate. And even if it's a stand ready solution, it's standing ready in the event of a regulatory shift from what you're accustomed to. And that allows your investors to know you have some level of business continuity, and it's part of a broader risk management perspective that it's hard for people to get their arms around. right? It's hard to people that
Yeah.
get their arms around that Apple Pay and Venmo and Stripe and pick your favorite Shopify and WooCommerce will go away the day that you become a Schedule One drug or a Schedule Three drug. They will not do it.
Right.
And what are you going to do next? Right? When you're on ADP or Ceridian or Paychex and you find yourself now in the Schedule One, Schedule Three, and you can't pay your people because they've now terminated their relationship with you, which if you read the small print in their contract, they have the ability to terminate their relationship. And as I said earlier, we launched the what I believe is the first fully cannabis compliant multiple employer 401k plan. Well, goodness, if you're an intoxicating hemp company and you're on, pick your favorite 401k plan provider, almost all of them are not
Yeah.
friendly to the cannabis industry. And therefore, that's another migration of services. It is a massive change in business for you to stand up if you're just waiting for the regulatory winds to shift. And so, again, I invite people to reach out and talk about it, and let's get you sustainable regardless of the regulatory winds.
Yeah,
Just to, I mean,
absolutely.
to add to that, the number of stories we've heard about, not even just, employees of cannabis companies, but service providers like lawyers, getting these nasty letters from their bank saying, "Oh, we hear you're involved in the cannabis industry. We're closing your bank account. We're closing your brokerage account." A friend, former colleague who, almost got tossed out of Morgan Stanley. I mean, it's like, I mean, yeah, and 4% of her practice was cannabis, but it was on their webpage.
Right.
So it's we need to solve for these problems, and Terry's group is doing a great job of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so easy final question for both of you. Where can people find you professionally, whether it's LinkedIn, websites, anything in between? Where can everybody find you? Michael, why don't you go first?
Multiple ways. Obviously, go to the Duane Morris website. We have attorney bios. I also have a LinkedIn page. I think it's M Schwamm, but just search my name and you can find me, or go to the Duane Morris website. You can find me there.
All right. And Terry, where can people find you if they want to get your
I'm
advice, work with
absolutely
you?
everywhere,
Yeah.
but it's terry.mendez at shfinancial.org. Trying to change that .org. Um, Clearly on LinkedIn, but I give people my cell phone. I want you to call me. Call me 631-418-7763. I promise not to pick up, but I'll respond to your voice.
And if you forget that number, reach out to me and I'll give you his number.
Well, this has been great. I really appreciate you both being here. Deeply grateful for your time, especially Terry. I know you're a really busy guy, so I appreciate that. And with that, we're at the end of our show. I'll start our closing notes here. But for anybody that has any questions from this podcast or any of our other podcasts, you know where to find me, and now you know where to find Michael and Terry as well. But I'm at jsylvia@duanemorris.com. But reach out to any of us with any questions you might have. Otherwise, be sure to like and subscribe. And thank you to our guests, and thank you to the audience for paying attention. Appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.